You think nature is playing fair? Look at the tree, any tree, the one outside your window, the oak in the park, the pine on the mountain. Look at how it branches. The trunk splits into large limbs. Those limbs split into smaller branches. Those branches split into twigs. The twigs split into even smaller twigs. And at the end, leaves, thousands of them, millions of them, all connected to that single trunk through this impossibly intricate network of branching. Now here's the question no one asks. Why does it look like that? Why that particular pattern? Why do branches split and split and split again in that specific way? Most people shrug. That's just how trees grow. Nature designed them that way. It's beautiful, it's organic, it's natural. But that's not an answer. That's just describing what you see. When you really ask why trees branch the way they do, when you dig into the mathematics behind that pattern, you discover something that changes everything you think you know about how nature builds things. Nature isn't playing fair. Nature is cheating. And once you understand the cheat, you see it everywhere. Let me show you what I mean. Start with a problem. You're a tree. You need to do two things. First, you need to collect sunlight, lots of it. Sunlight is your energy source. Without it, you die. Second, you need to transport water and nutrients from your roots to every single leaf. Thousands of leaves, millions of leaves. Each one needs water, each one needs minerals, each one is a tiny factory that needs a constant supply. So you have a transportation problem. You need to build a network that reaches every leaf while using as little material as possible. Wood is expensive. It takes energy to grow. You can't waste it. Here's where it gets interesting. If you were an engineer, you might try to solve this problem with straight lines, efficient pipes, direct routes. That's how we build things. Water mains, electrical grids, highway systems. We love straight lines. We love efficiency at a single scale. But trees don't do that. Trees branch. They split and subdivide over and over. Why? Because trees aren't solving a single scale problem. They're solving a multi-scale problem, and that changes everything. Think about what a tree actually needs to accomplish. It needs to fill a three-dimensional volume with leaves, not just cover an area, fill a volume, because sunlight comes from above, from the sides, at different angles throughout the day. A tree that only spread leaves in one plane would waste most of that light. So the tree needs to occupy space. It needs to be a three-dimensional structure. But here's the constraint. The tree is fed from a single point, the root system connecting to the trunk. Everything flows through that one trunk. Every drop of water, every mineral, every bit of sugar flowing back down. One trunk serving millions of endpoints. Now think about the mathematics of this. If you have a single source and millions of destinations spread through a three-dimensional volume, what's the most efficient network? What shape minimizes the total length of pipe while reaching every destination? The answer is branching, hierarchical branching, splitting over and over at regular ratios. And here's the beautiful part. The splitting isn't random. It follows rules, scaling rules. When a branch splits, the daughter branches are smaller than the parent, not randomly smaller, precisely smaller. The ratio of diameters follows a mathematical law. The angles of splitting follow patterns. The lengths of successive branches follow ratios. This is what I call a scaling law, a rule that describes how properties change as you move from one scale to another. In trees, the cross-sectional area of the trunk equals the sum of the cross-sectional areas of all the branches above it. This is called the pipe model. It's as if the trunk contains all the pipes that will eventually become separate branches bundled together. When the trunk splits, those pipes separate. But the total carrying capacity stays the same. This principle applies at every level, every branch point, every split, the same ratio, the same rule, scale after scale after scale. And this is why I say nature is cheating. Classical science, classical engineering, classical thinking loves single scales. We analyze things at one magnification. We optimize for one size. We think in terms of fixed dimensions. But trees don't work that way. Trees work across scales. They use the same trick at every level of magnification. The pattern of branching you see in the trunk repeats in miniature in every branch, every twig, every vein, in every leaf. This is self-similarity. Not exact self-similarity. The branches aren't perfect miniature copies of the whole tree, but approximate self-similarity. Similar enough that the same mathematical rules apply at every scale. When you see this, when you really see it, you realize that the tree isn't solving millions of separate problems. It's solving one problem and then repeating the solution at every scale. That's the cheat. That's the trick. Nature found one good design and used it over and over, scaling it up and down as needed. Let me make this concrete. Look at the leaf. Look at the veins in that leaf. What do you see? Branching, the main vein splits into smaller veins. Those split into smaller veins still. The pattern looks like a miniature tree because it's solving the same problem at a smaller scale. Transport from one source to many destinations spread through a surface. Now look at your lungs, your bronchial tree. The trachea splits into bronchi. Those split into smaller bronchi. Those split into bronchioles over and over, about 23 levels of branching until you reach the alveoli, the tiny air sacs where oxygen actually enters your blood. Why this structure? Same reason as the tree. You need to fill a volume. You need to maximize surface area for gas exchange. You need to reach every part of the lung from a single source. The solution? Branching, hierarchical, self-similar branching. Look at your circulatory system. Your heart pumps blood into the aorta. The aorta branches into arteries. Arteries branch into smaller arteries. Those branch into arterioles. Those branch into capillaries. Millions of capillaries reaching every cell in your body. Then the blood returns through venules, veins, larger veins back to the heart. Same pattern, same scaling law, same cheat. Look at river systems. A main river fed by tributaries. Those tributaries fed by smaller streams. Those streams fed by smaller creeks. Those creeks fed by runoff from the land. The pattern of a river basin seen from above looks like a tree turned upside down because it's solving the inverse problem, collecting water from an area and funneling it to a single point. Same mathematics, same scaling rules, same branching structure. This is not coincidence. This is not design in the sense of someone planning it. This is the inevitable solution to a certain class of problems. When you need to connect a single point to many points distributed through space, when you need to do it efficiently, when you need to minimize material while Wajimkesem maximizing coverage, you get branching, you get a hierarchical structure, you get self-similarity across scales. Nature discovered this not through intelligence, but through selection. Organisms that used this pattern survived. Organisms that didn't, over billions of years, the same solution was rediscovered over and over because it's the right solution. But here's what classical science missed. Classical science looked at these structures and described them. Oak trees branch like this, maple trees branch like that, lungs have this many levels of branching, rivers follow these patterns. What classical science didn't do was see the underlying unity. The same mathematics, the same scaling laws, the same geometric principle appearing in completely different systems. I saw it in the 1960s and 70s when I started studying what I called fractals. I noticed something remarkable. The mathematics of irregular shapes, the geometry of roughness kept appearing in system after system. Coastlines, mountains, clouds, turbulence, and yes, trees. Trees are fractals, not perfect mathematical fractals, but natural fractals. They exhibit approximate self-similarity across scales. The branching pattern at large scales resembles the branching pattern at small scales, not identical, but similar enough that the same mathematical description applies. This is what makes fractal geometry powerful. It's not just a way to draw pretty pictures, it's a language for describing structures that classical geometry couldn't handle. Classical geometry deals with smooth shapes, exact circles, spheres, planes, cones, shapes defined by their dimension, one-dimensional lines, two-dimensional surfaces, three-dimensional volumes. But trees aren't smooth, their surfaces are rough, their structures are branched and irregular, and they don't fit neatly into integer dimensions. A tree's branching structure is more than one-dimensional, but less than three-dimensional. It's somewhere in between. It has a fractional dimension, a fractal dimension that captures how it fills space. This isn't just mathematical abstraction. The fractal dimension of a tree tells you something real about how it functions. It tells you how efficiently it fills space with leaves. It tells you how its surface area scales with its volume. It tells you about its transport properties. When you measure a tree's fractal dimension, you're measuring a fundamental property of its design. And remarkably, trees of the same species tend to have similar fractal dimensions. The branching pattern, the scaling law, is encoded in the tree's genes. It's part of what makes an oak and a maple a maple. Now here's the deeper insight. Why does this matter? Why should you care that trees follow scaling laws? Because it changes how you understand complexity. For most of history, complexity was mysterious. Complex things were assumed to require complex explanations. A tree is complex, therefore its design must be elaborate, intricate, requiring detailed specifications for every branch and twig. But that's wrong. A tree is complex in its appearance, but simple in its rules. The complexity emerges from the repeated application of simple scaling rules across many levels. You don't need to specify where every branch goes. You need to specify the branching rules. How daughter branches relate to parent branches in size, angle, length. Apply those rules repeatedly, and the complex structure emerges automatically. This is the secret of natural complexity. It's not designed from the top down with every detail specified. It's generated from the bottom up with simple rules applied recursively. A tree doesn't have a blueprint showing the location of every twig. It has an algorithm, a set of growth rules that generate twigs as needed. The rules are simple. The result is complex. This insight extends far beyond trees. Your brain has roughly 86 billion neurons connected by trillions of synapses. Is every connection specified in your DNA? No, your DNA doesn't have enough information to specify trillions of connections. Instead, your brain develops through growth rules. Neurons extend axons following chemical gradients. Connections form based on activity patterns. Simple rules repeated billions of times generate astronomical complexity. Economies are complex systems, millions of people making billions of decisions. Is there a central plan specifying every transaction? No. Simple rules of supply and demand repeated across countless interactions generate complex market dynamics. Cities are complex systems. Buildings, roads, neighborhoods, all interconnected. No one designs a city from scratch with every building specified. Cities grow through repeated application of zoning rules, building codes, economic incentives, simple rules, complex results. This is the pattern. Complexity emerges from simplicity through repetition across scales. And trees are the perfect example, the perfect demonstration of how nature generates intricate structure from elementary rules. When you look at a tree and see complexity, you're seeing an illusion. The complexity isn't in the specification, it's in the iteration. The tree followed simple rules many times and complexity emerged. This is what I mean when I say nature cheats. Nature doesn't solve complex problems with complex solutions. Nature finds simple solutions and applies them recursively. The same trick at every scale. We humans, with our love of straight lines and optimal solutions at single scales, look at the result and see chaos, randomness, inexplicable intricacy. We think nature must be doing something complicated. We think there must be some elaborate design principle we're missing. There isn't. The principle is simple. Repeat the same pattern at every scale. Let the complexity take care of itself. This is why fractal thinking matters. It's not just a branch of mathematics, it's a way of seeing, a way of understanding how complex structures arise in nature. When I developed fractal geometry, I wasn't trying to create abstract art or mathematical curiosities. I was trying to understand the real world, the rough world, the world of mountains and clouds and coastlines and trees, the world that classical mathematics couldn't describe. And I found that the key to understanding this world was scale, not analyzing things at one fixed scale, but understanding how properties change across scales, not looking for smoothness, but embracing roughness, not seeking single optimal solutions, but recognizing hierarchical self-similar structures. Trees taught me this. Trees and rivers and lungs and lightning bolts and 100 other natural phenomena that all exhibited the same pattern. The pattern is branching. The mathematics is scaling laws. The geometry is fractal, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Look at a tree now. What do you see? You see a solution to a transportation problem. You see a network that connects one source to millions of destinations. You see a structure that fills three-dimensional space efficiently. But more than that, you see a scaling law in action. You see the same pattern repeated at every level of magnification. You see self-similarity across scales. You see nature's cheat code. The tree didn't need to figure out where every branch should go. It just needed to follow the rules. Split at this ratio, branch at this angle, repeat until you reach the leaves. Simple rules, complex results. This is how nature builds things, not through elaborate design, but through recursive application of scaling laws. Not through optimization at a single scale, but through strategies that work across all scales. The next time someone asks why trees look the way they do, you can tell them, trees branch because branching is the solution to multi-scale transport problems. The pattern repeats because self-similar structures are efficient across scales. The complexity emerges because simple rules applied recursively generate intricate results. Nature isn't cheating in the sense of breaking rules. Nature is cheating in the sense of using one trick over and over, finding what works and scaling it. Using the same pattern at every level. We call it cheating because it seems too simple. It seems like there should be more to it. We want elaborate explanations for elaborate phenomena, but nature doesn't care what we want. Nature does what works. And what works is scaling laws. What works is self-similarity. What works is fractal structure. The trees knew this long before we did. They've been practicing fractal geometry for 400 million years. We're just beginning to understand. And that understanding changes everything, not just how we see trees, how we see complexity itself, how we see the relationship between a simple rule and intricate outcomes. How we see the role of scale in shaping the natural world. Classical geometry gave us tools for smooth shapes. A fractal geometry gives us tools for rough shapes. Classical thinking focused on single scales. Fractal thinking embraces all scales. Classical science sought complex explanations for complex phenomena. Fractal science reveals simple rules generating complexity. Trees stand as proof. 400 million years of proof that nature's solutions are elegant, not because they're complicated, but because they're recursive. Not because they're optimal at one scale, but because they work at every scale. Nature cheats. And the cheat is beautiful. Not comfort, not simplicity, truth.